As always, it is such a pleasure to present to you the Sanctuary Sunday School powered by the Sanctuary Academy. And this week is special because this lesson is dedicated to the memory of my mother, Missionary Viola Stewart, who, in my opinion, is the greatest Sunday school teacher of all time. If you've been watching these videos and if you enjoy them at all, it is only because of her. We laid my mother to rest over the weekend. It's been a long journey. I've been caring for my mother for the past 5 years. She passed away from complications with Alzheimer's and dementia. And everyone has just been wonderful throughout these times. And my comfort and my joy right now is that she made it. As I stood there over the gravesite as they lowered the casket, my heart was grieving, but I also felt joy because she made it. Her final words was, "Jesus, come get me." And I was singing about Jesus to her, and she was praising. And the Lord received her, and I have nothing but joy in my heart when I think of my mother, because she was truly a soldier, and she's gone to be with the Lord. I thank you for everything. I have not had to cook or clean. My house is full of flowers. People have been sending monetary gifts. If you like to do so, I'll post the Cash App or Zelle information. It's just been an outpouring of love, and the service was beautiful. So I just wanted to share that this week with you, because through this time where I was caring for my mother, the Sanctuary Academy was extremely instrumental in getting me through that time. So I thank you. I appreciate you. And so I just wanted to share that. So I took a little bit longer than I usually take before I get to the lesson, but you've got to bear with me because I just needed to share that with you, as I consider you a part of my extended family. So again, thank you for your prayers and your continued support. So let's get to this lesson. One of my favorite lessons. I've said before, my two favorite people in the Bible are David and the Apostle Paul, because those were some tough men. And when you need some strength, those are men that you can go to, because they had so much fortitude when it came to the work of the Lord. So we're talking here about David, and it says David against Goliath. And we can find that text in the book of 1 Samuel in the 17th chapter. And as we know, David was Jesse's son, and he was a shepherd. And David was not even in the army. Okay, he was supposed to be there tending sheep. And his brothers were in the army. And his father sent him out there to bring a meal to his brothers. And that's why he was there. And when he was there, he heard about Goliath. And Goliath was a giant. The word said that he was approximately 9 feet 9 inches tall. And when I was looking at Goliath too, I was also reading about the weight of his armor. So not only was he huge and physically strong himself, but he was also protected by just weights of silver and steel, and the armor and the shield, all of these things that he had to fortify himself. And before we go any further, that just blessed me, because sometimes we face formidable enemies. They seem big, they seem tough, they seem strong. We face opponents or situations that seem insurmountable, invincible, and it looks like it's just too much. The enemy wants to convince us that we can't handle it, but God. And so we see this is the giant. And again, I want to reiterate that David was not a soldier. David was a shepherd, and he had just come to bring food to his brothers. So he had not been trained. He did not have custom fit armor. He just came and he took a stand because this Philistine giant was defiling the people of God. And that's something that's so timely because we're living in a day where people want to defile the house of God and to defile the people of God and to defile the name of God. And as children of God, we've got to rise up and we've got to stand up and be like David and not be afraid to stand against the giant. And so we see when he went, the word says here that Goliath had disdain for him. And he's looking like, I'm insulted. Why you send this little boy to fight me? Don't you see me? Don't you see how big I am, how tall I am, how strong I am, how powerful I am, and how secure my armor is? Don't you see? And you sent this little boy. He was insulted, and he underestimated David. And he started talking about how he was going to kill him and he was going to feed him to the fowls of the air, and his carcass would be, he would kill him. What he was going to do to his carcass and all of this stuff he was talking. And David, he heard those threats and he was not fazed. How many of you know that the enemy threatens us? He threatens us daily. He gets in your mind and he tells you stuff. You ain't going to make it. You're not good enough. You don't have enough. It's not going to work for you. You're going to die in this. It's not going to get better. It's going to always get worse. You may as well just give up right now. This is the devil. Those are threats of the enemy that's in your head, and he's attacking you in your mind. The Goliaths in your life that come to try to take you out and destroy you. And not only that, see, in this battle, it says, our subject says David against Goliath, but it was a little bit more than that, because Goliath was attacking more than David. Goliath was attacking the people of God. Goliath was attacking the very nature and the very powerful power of God. And so that's what we have to understand as children of God. An attack from the enemy is not just about you, but it's about the God in you. So the only way that you can be victorious over those attacks is to allow the God in you to rise up. And so he went to King Saul, and Saul, Saul knew, again, you are not a soldier. You haven't been trained. You are not equipped to fight this giant. And Saul wasn't going to let him do it. But see, David was so strong in his faith until he was able to convince King Saul to allow him to go up against Goliath. And then Saul gave him his blessing. And here's another key point in here. He also gave him his honor, his armor, his protective gear. And David, he tried it on and he said, this doesn't fit. And the word said he put it off. He took it off. And see, sometimes when we go into ministry, and this part of the scripture is something that has always blessed me, because as I have said many times, I'm different. My style of teaching and my style of ministry is different. And there were times when I tried to assimilate. I tried to put on my mother's armor. I tried to put on my father's armor. I tried to be like them and do what they did in the way that they did it. But God gave me my own way. And so David was wise enough to put off Saul's armor and use what the Lord has given him. You don't have to mimic. You don't have to imitate. You don't have to try to be like somebody else. Use what God gave you. And it said he took his bag and he took his slingshot and he took 5 smooth stones. And I want to go back to a little bit when he was talking to Saul. He said, look, I'm a shepherd and I take care of my sheep. He said, and it was a bear that came against my sheep and I killed that bear. It was a lion that came against my sheep. And I love it. He said, and I grabbed him by his beard and I killed that lion and protected my sheep. And he said, just like I killed that lion, just like I killed that bear, I'm about to do the same thing to this giant. That's the kind of faith that David had in God. Sometimes you got to look back over your life and remember what God has brought you through. You got to remember the victories, and you got to look the enemy in the face and tell him, you're going to have the same fate as the rest of my enemies had. I am going to be victorious. And as we know the story, David took that slingshot and he twirled it around in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, and he hit that giant, and it said that the stone landed square. And I love the imagery in this story. It says that the stone sunk into his forehead and the giant fell dead. And I love this because this is another example of God, Jehovah Jireh being more than enough. He had 5 stones, but he was able to get them with just 1 stone. And it just shows how God is a provider. He's a deliverer, and how he cares for his people. And I know that I didn't get last Sunday's lesson in because I was dealing with the burial of my mother. But in last Sunday's lesson, we talked about how Saul made a mistake and he displeased God. And because of that mistake, God said that Saul's house would not maintain the throne, that the throne would be removed from Saul's house. And we see here that David right here is being set up for greatness and to be great in the eyesight of the Lord. David against Goliath. When you face the Goliaths in your life, your Goliath is that thing. You might be facing one right now. That thing that you just can't even figure out. By all human faculties, by all human reasoning, it is supposed to defeat you. But God, the Goliaths in your life, this COVID-19 coronavirus can be styled as a Goliath, but you don't have to be afraid. I want you to go back and read through this 17th chapter of St. Samuel, just at the sheer bravery and faith and strength that David has. This is the same God. The God that lived in David lives in us. And so the Goliaths that we face in our lives will face the same fate that this Goliath in this lesson faced. David told him, he said, no, I'm going to take you. I'm going to cut your head off. I'm going to feed your carcass to the fowls of the air. Everything that Goliath said when he was taunting him, those are things that David turned around and he did to Goliath. So my message to you today is to hold on. Be strong. Don't be afraid. Go forth and be victorious through the power of the one true and living God.